The morning sun was just starting to peek through the kitchen windows when Lisa walked downstairs to make coffee, just like she had every morning for the past 8 years. She loved this quiet time before the ranch came alive with the sounds of cattle and work. The old farmhouse creaked under her feet as she moved through the familiar routine, her mind already planning the day ahead. But something was different today. There on the wooden kitchen table, right where she always set down the morning mail, were 2 official-looking envelopes. Her heart started beating faster as she recognized the letterhead from a law office in town. Next to the envelopes was a handwritten note in her husband David's messy handwriting. Lisa's hands were shaking as she picked up the note. The words seemed to jump off the page at her. David was asking for a divorce. After 8 years of marriage, he was leaving her for someone else. A woman named Ashley who worked at the bank in town. A woman who was 15 years younger than Lisa and had never spent a day working on a ranch. The note was cold and businesslike. David explained that he had already moved most of his things out while she was visiting her sister last weekend. He had been planning this for months, he wrote. The divorce papers were already filed. The lawyers would handle everything else. Lisa sank down into her favorite kitchen chair, the same one where she had sat every morning drinking coffee with David, planning their days together. She remembered how they used to talk about their dreams for the ranch, how they would expand the cattle operation, maybe add some horses. David always said they made a good team, but apparently that had all been a lie. The worst part was reading about how David had been secretly meeting with lawyers and accountants for months. While Lisa had been working from dawn to dusk helping run their ranch, David had been making plans to leave her. He had been transferring money into accounts she didn't know about. He had been preparing to start a new life without her. Lisa walked through the house in a daze, noticing for the first time all the empty spaces where David's things used to be. His favorite coffee mug was gone from the kitchen cabinet. His boots were missing from the mudroom. Even his old ranch hat that usually hung by the back door had disappeared. In their bedroom, half the closet was empty. David had taken his clothes, his cologne, even the old leather journal where he used to write down cattle prices and weather predictions. It was like he had been erasing himself from her life piece by piece, and she hadn't even noticed. The phone started ringing around 9 in the morning. Word traveled fast in their small ranching community. First, it was her neighbor Betty, calling to see if the rumors were true. Then her sister called from 2 states away, having heard the news from their mother. By afternoon, Lisa had stopped answering the phone altogether. She spent the day walking around their property, remembering all the work she had put into this place. She had painted the barn twice. She had planted the vegetable garden behind the house. She had spent countless hours helping David with the cattle, learning everything she could about ranching even though she had grown up in town. Lisa remembered the early years when money was tight and they could barely afford groceries. She had taken a part-time job at the local diner to help pay the bills, working there during the day and then coming home to help David with the evening chores. She never complained, not even when she was so tired she could barely stand. She thought about all the times David had to travel to cattle auctions, sometimes for days at a time. Lisa had stayed home alone, taking care of everything by herself. Feeding the animals, fixing broken fences, dealing with emergencies. She had become a pretty good ranch hand over the years, though David rarely acknowledged her contributions. Now she was learning that while she was working so hard to support their dreams, David had been falling in love with someone else. Ashley was a town girl who wore high heels to work and had probably never touched a cow in her life. What could she possibly offer David that Lisa couldn't? The divorce papers made everything clear. David was keeping the main ranch house and most of the land. Lisa would get a small section on the far end of the property, and enough money to maybe survive for a year or 2 if she was careful. It wasn't nearly enough to start over, especially not at 35 years old with no college degree and 8 years of ranch work as her only experience. Lisa sat on the front porch that evening, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and pink over the mountains. This view had always been her favorite part of living on the ranch. She had imagined sitting here when she was old, maybe with grandchildren playing in the yard. Now that future was gone, replaced by uncertainty and fear. The hardest part wasn't even losing David, she realized. It was losing the life they had built together. The routines, the shared goals, the sense of purpose. She had poured her whole adult life into this ranch and this marriage, and now she was being told it was all worthless. As darkness fell, Lisa saw headlights coming down the long driveway. For a moment her heart jumped, thinking maybe David had changed his mind. Maybe he was coming home to tell her this had all been a terrible mistake. But it wasn't David's truck. It was her neighbor Tom, bringing over a casserole his wife had made and offering to help with anything Lisa might need. Tom had worked alongside David for years and seemed genuinely shocked by what had happened. "That boy's lost his mind," Tom said, shaking his head. "You were the best thing that ever happened to him, and everyone knows it except him apparently." After Tom left, Lisa sat alone in the empty house, trying to figure out what she was going to do next. She had no family nearby, no close friends outside of the ranching community where everyone now knew her business. She had some money, but not enough to start completely over somewhere else. The future that had seemed so certain just 24 hours ago was now completely unknown. Lisa had always been the kind of person who made plans and stuck to them. Now she didn't even know where she would be living in 6 months, or how she would support herself. She looked around the house that had been her home for 8 years, knowing that soon someone else would be living here. David's new young wife would be sleeping in the bed Lisa had picked out, cooking in the kitchen Lisa had organized, maybe even sitting on the same front porch watching the sunset. The thought made her stomach hurt, but it also made her angry. David was throwing away 8 years of marriage like it meant nothing. He was replacing her with someone who probably couldn't tell the difference between a bull and a steer. And somehow he thought that was an upgrade. As Lisa finally headed upstairs to bed, she made herself a promise. She wasn't going to just disappear quietly like David probably hoped she would. She was going to find a way to survive this and maybe even thrive. David thought he was getting rid of a problem by divorcing her, but he might just be making the biggest mistake of his life. She didn't know how yet, but somehow, some way, Lisa was going to prove that she was worth more than David had ever realized. The man who had thrown her away was going to learn exactly what he had lost, even if it was too late to get it back. 3 months had passed since David left, and Lisa was discovering just how hard it was to run even a small piece of ranch land by herself. Every morning brought new challenges that she and David used to handle together. Broken water pipes, sick cattle, equipment that wouldn't start. Problems that had seemed manageable with 2 people now felt overwhelming when she was facing them alone. The money from the divorce settlement was running out faster than she had expected. Ranch life was expensive, and without David's income from their cattle sales, Lisa was struggling to pay for basic necessities like feed, fuel, and equipment repairs. She had started skipping meals to save money, and her old truck was making strange noises that she couldn't afford to fix. Lisa was in the barn trying to repair a broken gate latch when she heard footsteps behind her. She turned around to see a tall man in worn jeans and a cowboy hat standing in the doorway. It took her a moment to recognize him as Ryan Mitchell, one of the ranch hands who used to work for David. Ryan was maybe a year or 2 older than Lisa, with sun-weathered skin and kind eyes. She remembered him as one of the hardest workers David had ever hired, but David had let him go about 6 months before the divorce. At the time, David said they couldn't afford to pay him anymore, but Lisa suspected there were other reasons. "Morning, Lisa," Ryan said, touching the brim of his hat politely. "Hope you don't mind me stopping by unannounced." Lisa wiped her greasy hands on an old rag and tried to smooth down her messy hair. She probably looked terrible, but she was too tired to care much about appearances anymore. "Hi, Ryan, what brings you out here?" Ryan looked around the barn, taking in the broken equipment and the general state of disrepair that had developed since David left. His expression was sympathetic but not pitying, which Lisa appreciated. "I heard about your situation," he said simply. "Word gets around in a small community like this. I also heard you might be having some trouble keeping up with everything on your own." Lisa felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment. She had been trying so hard to maintain the appearance that she was managing fine, but apparently her struggles were obvious to everyone. "I'm getting by," she said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. Ryan nodded, but his expression suggested he wasn't fooled. "Lisa, I'm going to be direct with you because I think you deserve honesty. I know you're in trouble financially. I know the bank is asking questions about your mortgage payments, and I know David left you with a lot less than you deserved after all the work you put into building up his ranch." Lisa stared at him, surprised by his bluntness. Most people in town had been tiptoeing around her situation, offering vague words of support, but not really acknowledging how bad things had gotten. I quit working for David because I couldn't stand watching how he treated you, Ryan continued. You did half the work around that ranch, but he acted like you were just along for the ride. When I heard he was planning to leave you for that banker's daughter, I told him he was making the biggest mistake of his life. You knew? Lisa asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Ryan nodded grimly. He started bragging about her around the other ranch hands months before he actually left you, talking about how she was young and pretty and came from money. It made me sick to listen to. Lisa felt tears stinging her eyes, but she blinked them back. She had cried enough over David's betrayal. She didn't want to break down in front of Ryan, even though he seemed genuinely sympathetic. So what brings you here today? She asked, changing the subject. Ryan took off his hat and ran his hand through his dark hair. I have a proposition for you. It's going to sound crazy at first, but I want you to hear me out before you say no. Lisa crossed her arms and waited for him to continue. I've got some money saved up from working various ranches over the years. Enough to help you catch up on your bills and fix up this place properly. I also have more experience running cattle and horses than most men twice my age. What I don't have is land of my own or a real future in this business. Okay, Lisa said slowly, not sure where this was going. Ryan looked directly at her, his expression serious. I want to marry you, Lisa. Lisa's mouth fell open. Of all the things she had expected him to say, that wasn't even on the list. I know how that sounds, Ryan said quickly, holding up his hand before she could respond. But hear me out. This wouldn't be a regular marriage, at least not at first. Think of it as a business partnership with some extra legal protections. Lisa found her voice. Are you completely out of your mind? Ryan actually smiled at that. Maybe a little. But think about it logically. You need help saving this place and building something sustainable. I need land and a chance to prove I can run my own operation. Together we could make this work. But marriage? Lisa said, still struggling to process what he was suggesting. Ryan, I barely know you. We've probably had maybe a dozen conversations in all the years you worked for David. That's true, Ryan admitted. But I know your character. I watched you work alongside David for years. I saw how hard you tried to make him happy. How much effort you put into that ranch. I saw how he took credit for ideas that were obviously yours, and how you never complained about it. Lisa felt her cheeks getting warm again, but this time it wasn't from embarrassment. I also know that David was a fool to let you go, Ryan continued. Any man with half a brain could see that you were the best thing that ever happened to him. You're smart, you're tough, and you're not afraid of hard work. Those are exactly the qualities I'd want in a business partner. But what's in it for you? Lisa asked. I mean, really? Why would you want to tie yourself to someone else's mess? Ryan was quiet for a moment, looking out toward the pasture where a few of Lisa's remaining cattle were grazing. Honestly, part of it is that I want to show David what an idiot he is. He's been telling everyone in town that you'll never make it on your own, that you'll come crawling back to him within a year. It would give me a lot of satisfaction to prove him wrong. Lisa felt a spark of anger at hearing that David was betting against her, but she also felt a strange sense of gratitude toward Ryan for wanting to help her prove David wrong. But that's not the only reason. Ryan continued. I've been working for other people my whole adult life, always making them successful while I stayed poor. This could be my chance to build something of my own, with someone who actually appreciates hard work. What exactly are you proposing? Lisa asked. A marriage of convenience, at least to start. We pool our resources, work together to build up this ranch and see what happens. Maybe over time it becomes something more. Maybe it doesn't, but either way, we both get what we need most right now. Lisa stared at him, trying to decide if he was completely crazy or actually brilliant. I know it's a lot to think about, Ryan said, and I'm not expecting an answer right now. But Lisa, you're going to lose this place if something doesn't change soon. I've seen it happen to too many good people in this business. What would people think? Lisa asked. Ryan shrugged. People are already talking about you anyway. At least this way. They'd have something positive to talk about. A woman who found a way to save her ranch and build something better. Lisa looked around her property, taking in the broken fences and the weeds growing where she used to have a vegetable garden. Everything was falling apart and she was running out of options. How do I know you're not just looking for a cheap way to get some land? She asked. You don't, Ryan said honestly. Just like I don't know for sure that you won't decide you want to go back to David if he changes his mind about the divorce. We'd both be taking a risk. David's not changing his mind, Lisa said firmly. He's already moved in with Ashley. I heard they're planning a big wedding next spring. Then it sounds like you're both free to make your own decisions about the future, Ryan said. Lisa was quiet for a long moment, trying to imagine what it would be like to be married to Ryan. He seemed like a decent man, and she had never heard any of the other ranch hands say a bad word about him. But marriage was such a huge step, even if it was just supposed to be a business arrangement. I need time to think about this, she said finally. Of course, Ryan said, putting his hat back on. Take all the time you need. But Lisa, don't take too long. I heard through the grapevine that the bank is planning to start foreclosure proceedings next month, if you can't catch up on your payments. After Ryan left, Lisa sat on her front porch and tried to think through his proposal rationally. It was crazy, but it might also be her only real chance to save her home and build the kind of life she had always wanted. The more she thought about it, the more sense it made. Ryan was right that they both needed what the other had to offer. And if David thought she was going to fail and come crawling back to him, maybe it was time to show him just how wrong he could be. Lisa said yes to Ryan's proposal 3 days later. Not because she was in love with him, but because she was tired of being afraid and tired of feeling helpless. They had a simple courthouse wedding with just 2 witnesses they pulled in from the hallway. Lisa wore a simple blue dress she already owned, and Ryan wore his best pair of jeans and a clean white shirt. The whole ceremony took less than 15 minutes, but as they walked out of the courthouse as husband and wife, Lisa felt something she hadn't experienced in months: hope. For the first time since David left, she felt like she might actually have a future worth looking forward to. Ryan moved into the guest bedroom of the farmhouse that same week. He brought with him 2 suitcases of clothes, a toolbox that looked like it had seen better days, and a bank account with enough money to catch up on all of Lisa's overdue bills. True to his word, he immediately started working on repairs around the property that Lisa had been putting off because she couldn't afford to fix them. The first few weeks were awkward as they tried to figure out how to live together. They were essentially strangers who happened to share a last name now. Lisa had gotten used to living alone, and suddenly there was someone else using her coffee maker in the morning and leaving boots by the back door. But Ryan was nothing like David had been. Where David was loud and took up space, Ryan was quiet and respectful. He asked permission before changing anything, and he actually listened when Lisa shared her opinions about how things should be done around the ranch. The biggest surprise came when Lisa mentioned her old dream of raising horses alongside the cattle. David had always dismissed this idea, saying horses were too much trouble and not profitable enough. But Ryan's eyes lit up when she brought it up. I've been working with horses since I was 12 years old, he told her. My grandfather raised quarter horses before he lost his ranch in the drought of '98. I always thought that was the direction I wanted to go if I ever had my own place. Within a month, Ryan had found 3 young mares for sale at a reasonable price. The owner was getting out of the horse business and needed to sell quickly. Lisa couldn't believe it when Ryan asked for her opinion on which horses to buy instead of just making the decision himself. This is your dream too now, he said simply, when she pointed out how different he was from David. We're partners in this. That means both our opinions matter. Working together every day, Lisa and Ryan started to develop an easy rhythm. Ryan was an early riser like Lisa, and they would drink coffee together on the front porch each morning while planning their day. Ryan was good with his hands and could fix almost anything that broke. Lisa had a head for numbers and organization, keeping track of expenses and income in a way that David never had. Lisa found herself actually enjoying ranch work again. With David, every task had felt like a test she might fail. David was always quick to point out when she did something wrong or inefficiently. Ryan, on the other hand, seemed to assume she was competent unless proven otherwise. When she did make mistakes, he would quietly show her a better way without making her feel stupid. The horses brought new life to the ranch. Lisa had forgotten how much she loved working with animals that had personalities and formed bonds with their handlers. The cattle were business, but the horses were becoming something more personal. Ryan turned out to be amazing with the horses. He had a calm, patient way with them that reminded Lisa of her grandfather, who had always been her favorite person when she was growing up. Watching Ryan work with a skittish young mare, speaking softly and moving slowly until the animal trusted him, Lisa felt something stirring in her chest that she hadn't expected. It wasn't love. Not yet. But it was the beginning of genuine respect and admiration for the man she had married for purely practical reasons. Word about Lisa and Ryan's marriage had spread through the community quickly, as news always did in their small town. Most people seemed supportive or at least curious about how things would work out, but there were also whispers and gossip, especially among the people who had been friends with David. The worst gossip seemed to be coming from David himself. Lisa heard through mutual friends that he was telling people Ryan had taken advantage of Lisa's desperate situation, that she had been tricked into a marriage with a drifter who would probably disappear as soon as he got tired of ranch life. Lisa tried not to let the gossip bother her, but it was hard to ignore completely. She found herself watching Ryan sometimes, looking for signs that David might be right. Was Ryan planning to stick around, or was this all just a temporary arrangement for him too? Her doubts started to fade when Ryan began talking about long-term plans for the ranch. He wanted to build a proper stable for the horses. He thought they should expand their pasture land. He had ideas for improving their water system that would take several years to implement fully. These weren't the plans of someone who was looking to disappear in a few months. The real test came when David showed up at their ranch one evening in early fall. Lisa was in the kitchen making dinner when she saw his familiar truck coming down the driveway. Her heart started pounding and she felt sick to her stomach. She hadn't seen her ex-husband since the day he moved out, and she wasn't sure she was ready for this confrontation. Ryan was in the barn, but he must have seen the truck too because he came walking toward the house wiping his hands on a rag. His expression was calm, but Lisa could tell he was alert and ready for trouble. David got out of his truck and looked around the property with obvious surprise. In the months since Ryan had moved in, they had made significant improvements. The broken fences were repaired, the barn had a fresh coat of paint, and the horses were grazing peacefully in the pasture. The place looked better than it had in years. "Hello, David," Lisa said, stepping out onto the front porch. She was proud that her voice sounded steady. "Lisa," David nodded, then looked over at Ryan. "Ryan." "David," Ryan replied coolly. He didn't offer to shake hands, and David didn't extend his. "I heard you two got married," David said, his tone suggesting he found this information hard to believe. "That's right," Lisa said. "Is there something we can do for you?" David looked uncomfortable, which was unusual for him. He had always been confident to the point of arrogance, but today he seemed unsure of himself. "I wanted to see how you were doing," he said. "Make sure you were okay." Lisa almost laughed at that. Where had this concern been when he was serving her divorce papers and taking most of their assets? "I'm doing fine," she said. "We both are." David's eyes traveled over the improved property again, and Lisa could see that he was bothered by what he was seeing. Maybe he had expected to find her failing, struggling, ready to admit that she couldn't make it without him. "The place looks good," he admitted grudgingly. "Thank you," Ryan said. "Lisa and I make a good team." There was something in the way Ryan said it that made David's jaw tighten. Like Ryan was claiming something that David thought should still belong to him. "Well," David said after an awkward pause, "I just wanted to make sure you were all right. I heard some people in town talking, and I was worried someone might be taking advantage of your situation." Lisa felt anger flare in her chest. Even now, David couldn't give her credit for making her own decisions. "No one's taking advantage of me, David," she said firmly. "I'm exactly where I want to be." David looked like he wanted to say something else, but Ryan stepped closer to Lisa, not in a threatening way, but in a way that made it clear he was standing with her. "I think Lisa's made her position clear," Ryan said quietly. "Unless you have some actual business to discuss, maybe it's time for you to go." David stared at Ryan for a moment, and Lisa could see the wheels turning in his head. He was probably trying to decide if he wanted to push this confrontation further. But something in Ryan's calm confidence seemed to convince him that would be a bad idea. "Take care of yourself, Lisa," David said finally, getting back in his truck. After he drove away, Lisa and Ryan stood in the driveway for a moment without saying anything. Lisa was surprised to find that seeing David again hadn't hurt as much as she had expected. If anything, she felt sorry for him. He looked smaller somehow, less important than he used to seem. "You okay?" Ryan asked. "Yeah," Lisa said, and she meant it. "Actually, I think I'm better than okay." That night at dinner, Lisa found herself really looking at Ryan across the table. He had been nothing but kind and respectful to her. He worked harder than anyone she had ever known. He treated her like an equal partner in everything they did. And when David had shown up trying to undermine her confidence, Ryan had stood by her without making her feel like she needed protecting. Maybe this marriage had started as just a business arrangement. But Lisa was beginning to think it could become something more. Something real. Something worth fighting for. For the first time since David left, Lisa went to bed that night feeling genuinely excited about what tomorrow might bring. Winter came early that year, and with it brought news that shocked everyone in their small ranching community. David's new marriage was falling apart in spectacular fashion. The gossip started trickling in through the usual channels. Conversations at the feed store, whispers at church, casual mentions during coffee visits with neighbors. Ashley, the young woman David had left Lisa for, had never adapted to ranch life like everyone expected. She hated the isolation, the hard work, and the smell of cattle. She complained constantly about the mud, the early mornings, and the lack of shopping and entertainment options. Instead of helping David build their life together, she spent most of her time driving to the city to spend money they couldn't afford. Lisa heard about this through her neighbor Betty, who had gotten the information from her sister who worked at the bank. Ashley had been using credit cards to fund her shopping trips and spa visits, running up debts that David didn't know about until the bills started arriving. When David confronted her about the spending, Ashley accused him of being cheap and controlling. That girl burned through more money in 6 months than most people see in 2 years, Betty told Lisa over coffee one morning. And when David tried to put limits on her spending, she packed up and moved back to her daddy's house in the city. But Ashley's departure wasn't the end of David's problems. It turned out she had been even busier than anyone realized. Before leaving town, Ashley had emptied several joint bank accounts, sold jewelry that David had given her, and even forged his signature on a loan application. By the time David discovered what she had done, Ashley was long gone, and he was left holding the bag for debts he didn't even know existed. The ranch that David had been so proud of, the one he had built partly with Lisa's help and then kept almost entirely for himself in the divorce, was now in serious financial trouble. Without Ashley's expected family connections and money, and with the new debts she had left behind, David was struggling to keep up with mortgage payments and operational expenses. Lisa tried to feel sorry for David when she heard about his troubles, but mostly she felt a sense of justice being served. He had thrown away a loyal wife who had worked beside him for 8 years, choosing instead a woman who saw him as a bank account rather than a partner. Now he was discovering the difference between someone who loved him and someone who loved what he could provide. Meanwhile, Lisa and Ryan's partnership was flourishing in ways that surprised them both. The horse breeding operation was showing real promise, with 2 of their mares pregnant and several potential buyers already expressing interest in the foals. Their cattle operation was running smoothly, and they had even started talking about expanding to neighboring property that might come up for sale. More importantly, their marriage was evolving from a business arrangement into something deeper and more genuine. Lisa found herself looking forward to Ryan's company, enjoying their morning coffee conversations and appreciating the way he listened to her ideas and took them seriously. Ryan, for his part, seemed to be opening up more, sharing stories about his childhood and his dreams for their future. They still slept in separate bedrooms, but there was a growing warmth between them that felt natural and comfortable. Lisa caught herself watching Ryan sometimes when he was working with the horses or fixing equipment, admiring his quiet competence and steady temperament. She was beginning to think that what they were building together might be even better than what she had lost with David. That's when David showed up at their door on a cold February morning, looking haggard and desperate in a way Lisa had never seen before. He was unshaven. His clothes looked like he had been sleeping in them, and there were dark circles under his eyes. This wasn't the confident, arrogant man who had served her divorce papers a year ago. This was someone who looked beaten down by life. "Lisa, I need to talk to you," he said, standing on the porch where Lisa had once dreamed of growing old with him. "Please, just give me a few minutes." Ryan appeared in the doorway behind Lisa, and Lisa could feel the tension between the 2 men immediately. But Ryan didn't say anything, just stood there as a quiet reminder that Lisa wasn't alone anymore. "What do you want, David?" Lisa asked. David looked around at their property, taking in all the improvements they had made. The new stable was nearly finished. The fences were all in perfect repair, and even in winter, everything looked well maintained and prosperous. "I made a mistake," David said, his voice barely above a whisper. "The biggest mistake of my life. I should never have left you, Lisa. You were the best thing that ever happened to me, and I was too stupid to realize it until it was too late." Lisa felt her heart skip a beat, not from hope, but from shock. This was the apology she had dreamed of hearing for months after he left. The acknowledgement that she had been valuable, that their marriage had meant something, that she hadn't deserved to be thrown away for someone younger and prettier. But now, hearing those words, Lisa realized they didn't have the power over her that they once would have had. "I'm in trouble, Lisa," David continued. "Real trouble. Ashley took everything and left me with debts I can't pay. The bank is threatening foreclosure on the ranch. Everything we built together, everything I took from you, it's all falling apart." "I'm sorry to hear that," Lisa said, and she meant it. She didn't want to see anyone lose their home, even David. "I want to make things right," David said desperately. "I know I hurt you, and I know I don't deserve another chance. But if you'll come back to me, I'll give you everything I should have given you before. Full partnership in the ranch, your name on all the deeds, complete control over all the decisions. You can run things however you want." Lisa stared at him, trying to process what he was offering. This was everything she had wanted during their marriage. Equal recognition, real partnership, the respect she had never gotten from him before. "I know about your arrangement with Ryan," David continued, glancing nervously at the man standing behind Lisa. "I know this marriage isn't real, not really. It's just business, right? You could dissolve it as easily as you started it. Come back to me, Lisa, and I'll spend the rest of my life making up for how badly I treated you." Lisa looked back at Ryan, trying to read his expression. His face was carefully neutral, but she could see something in his eyes that might have been hurt or fear or resignation. He had always said this was just a business arrangement. He had never promised her anything beyond mutual benefit and respect. If she wanted to go back to David, would Ryan try to stop her? Or would he step aside and let her make her own choice, just like he had let her make the choice to marry him in the first place? "The whole county knows I was wrong," David said. "Everyone can see that you've built something amazing here with Ryan. You proved that you didn't need me, that you were strong enough and smart enough to succeed on your own. I'm not asking you to come back because you need me, Lisa. I'm asking you to come back because I need you." It was a pretty speech, and Lisa could tell that David meant every word of it. He really was sorry. He really did regret leaving her. He really would give her the partnership and respect she had always wanted. A year ago, even 6 months ago, this apology would have been everything Lisa wanted to hear. She would have cried with relief and gratitude. She would have forgiven him immediately and agreed to try again. But standing there on the porch of the home she had built with Ryan, Lisa realized that David's apology had come too late. Not because she couldn't forgive him, but because she no longer needed his validation to know her own worth. Ryan had shown her what it felt like to be valued from the beginning, not just when someone was desperate and had no other options. Ryan had seen her potential when she was at her lowest point, not just after she had proven herself to everyone else. David was offering her everything she had once wanted. But Lisa was beginning to understand that what she had with Ryan might be worth even more. "I need time to think about this," Lisa said finally. David nodded eagerly. "Of course. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere." After David left, Lisa and Ryan stood in their kitchen in uncomfortable silence. Lisa knew that Ryan was waiting for her to say something, but she didn't know what words would be right. "He's offering you everything you always wanted," Ryan said finally. "Yes," Lisa said. "He is. And he's right that what we have is just business," Ryan continued. "I mean, that's how it started. If you want to go back to him, I won't stand in your way." Lisa looked at Ryan, really looked at him, and saw something in his expression that he was trying to hide. This marriage might have started as business for both of them, but somewhere along the way, it had become something more for him too. The question now was whether Lisa had the courage to choose what she had built with Ryan over what David was offering to rebuild with her. It should have been an easy choice, but Lisa knew that the whole community would be watching to see what she decided, and some of them would think she was crazy for turning down David's offer to get back the life he had taken from her. But maybe, Lisa thought, the life she had built with Ryan was actually better than anything she could rebuild with David. Maybe second chances weren't always about going back to what you had lost. Maybe sometimes they were about moving forward to something better. Lisa spent 3 sleepless nights thinking about David's offer. She walked the ranch at all hours, trying to sort through her feelings and figure out what her heart was really telling her. Ryan gave her space during this time, but she could feel his eyes on her sometimes, watching and waiting for her decision. On the surface, David's offer seemed like everything she could want. He was promising her full partnership in a much larger ranch, complete control over decisions, and public acknowledgement that she had been right all along. He was offering to undo the wrong he had done to her and give her the recognition she deserved. But the more Lisa thought about it, the more she realized that David's offer was missing something important. He was asking her to come back to him because he needed her, not because he truly valued her. His apology was motivated by desperation, not by genuine appreciation for who she was as a person. David had only realized her worth after losing her, and after his new wife had proven to be everything Lisa wasn't: selfish, shallow, and unreliable. He wasn't asking her to come back because he had fallen in love with her all over again. He was asking her to come back because she was his best option for saving himself from the mess he had created. Ryan, on the other hand, had seen her value when she was at her lowest point. He had believed in her when she didn't believe in herself. He had offered her partnership when she had nothing to offer him in return, except hard work and determination. Ryan's respect for her wasn't conditional on his own success or failure. It was based on his genuine appreciation for who she was. The deciding moment came when Lisa overheard a phone conversation David was having with someone from his truck parked in her driveway. He had come by again to pressure her for an answer, and while she was getting him a glass of water, she heard him talking through the open window. "Don't worry, I'll get her back," David was saying to whoever was on the other end of the line. "She's always been practical above everything else. When she realizes what I'm offering her, she'll come around. And once I get the ranch stabilized again, we can work out the details of how much control she actually needs to have." Lisa stood frozen in her kitchen, glass of water in her hand, as the truth of David's intentions became clear. He wasn't really offering her partnership. He was offering her just enough control to get her to come back, with the plan to gradually take back authority once his financial situation improved. He was trying to use her again, just like he always had. That night, Lisa made her decision. The annual Spring Founders Festival was the biggest social event of the year in their small community. Everyone in the county attended, from the oldest retired ranchers to the youngest children. It was held in the town park with live music, food booths, and dancing that went on until well after sunset. Lisa had been dreading the festival because she knew everyone would be watching her and Ryan, speculating about their marriage and wondering if the rumors about David wanting her back were true. But she had also realized that the festival would be the perfect place to make her feelings clear to everyone at once. She spent extra time getting ready that evening, choosing a pretty yellow sundress that Ryan had complimented her on before, and taking care with her hair and makeup. When she came downstairs, Ryan was waiting by the front door in his best shirt and the cowboy boots she had given him for Christmas. "You look beautiful," he said simply, and the sincerity in his voice made her heart flutter. "Thank you," she said. "You look pretty handsome yourself." The festival was in full swing when they arrived. The smell of barbecue filled the air, and a local country band was playing on the main stage. Lisa could feel eyes following them as they walked through the crowd, people trying to read their body language for clues about the state of their marriage. Lisa saw David across the park, standing with a group of ranchers near the beer booth. He looked better than he had the last time she had seen him, like he had gotten some sleep and cleaned himself up. When he saw her, he started walking in their direction, and Lisa knew this was her moment. The band finished their current song and announced that they were going to slow things down for couples who wanted to dance. Several pairs of people moved toward the dance floor that had been set up in front of the stage. "Would you like to dance?" Ryan asked Lisa, extending his hand. Lisa looked into Ryan's eyes and saw everything she needed to see: kindness, respect, genuine affection, and something deeper that might grow into love if she gave it the chance. "Yes," she said, taking his hand. "I'd like that very much." As they moved onto the dance floor, Lisa was aware that David had stopped walking toward them and was now standing still, watching. Good. She wanted him to see this. Ryan was a better dancer than Lisa had expected. He led her confidently around the floor, holding her close but respectfully, moving to the rhythm of a sweet love song about second chances and new beginnings. "Lisa," Ryan said quietly as they swayed together, "I need you to know something before you make your final decision about David's offer." "What's that?" Lisa asked, looking up at him. "This stopped being just business for me a long time ago," Ryan said, his voice so low that only she could hear him over the music. "I know that's not what we agreed to originally, but I can't pretend anymore that I don't have feelings for you." Lisa felt her breath catch in her throat. "Ryan, I'm not trying to pressure you," he said quickly. "If you want to go back to David, I'll understand. I'll step aside and wish you well because I want you to be happy more than I want you to be with me. But I needed you to know that losing you would break my heart." Lisa stopped dancing and looked up at Ryan's face. She could see the vulnerability in his expression, the fear that he had just admitted too much too soon. Around them, other couples continued to dance. But Lisa felt like she and Ryan were the only two people in the world. "Ryan," she said, loud enough that people nearby could hear her, "I need you to know something too." Ryan waited, his hand still resting gently on her waist. "David came back because he needs me to save him from his own mistakes," Lisa said, her voice carrying across the dance floor. "But you chose me when I needed someone to believe in me." That's the difference between settling for someone and choosing someone. Lisa could see that people had stopped dancing and were listening to their conversation. She could see David standing at the edge of the dance floor, his face pale as he realized what was happening. "David offered me everything I thought I wanted," Lisa continued, speaking to Ryan but knowing that everyone could hear her. "But you gave me everything I actually needed. You gave me respect from day one. You gave me partnership without me having to earn it. You saw my value before I even saw it myself." Lisa stepped closer to Ryan, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to look into his eyes. "I don't want to go back to someone who only appreciates me when he's desperate," she said. "I want to stay with someone who appreciated me when I had nothing to offer except hard work and determination." Lisa stood on her tiptoes and kissed Ryan right there in front of everyone at the Spring Founders Festival. It was a soft, sweet kiss that felt like a promise and a beginning all rolled into one. When they broke apart, the crowd around them burst into applause and cheers. Lisa looked around and saw smiling faces, people who seemed genuinely happy for their success and their obvious affection for each other. When Lisa finally looked toward where David had been standing, he was gone. His truck was pulling out of the parking lot, and Lisa felt a sense of closure watching him drive away. She hoped he would find someone who could love him the way he deserved to be loved, but she knew now that person wasn't her. "So," Ryan said, grinning down at her, "does this mean you're planning to stick around?" "Try and get rid of me," Lisa said, laughing as Ryan spun her around on the dance floor. 6 months later, Lisa and Ryan hosted their first official horse sale at their ranch. Buyers came from 3 states to look at their horses, and they sold every animal they had for sale at prices that exceeded their wildest expectations. Their reputation for raising quality horses with excellent temperaments was spreading, and they already had orders for foals that hadn't even been born yet. The business success was wonderful, but what made Lisa happiest was the way she and Ryan worked together. They made decisions as true equals, consulted each other on everything important, and supported each other through challenges and setbacks. Lisa had never experienced this kind of partnership before, and she was amazed by how much more she could accomplish with someone who truly believed in her abilities. Their marriage had evolved naturally from friendship and respect into something deeper and more romantic. They had moved into the master bedroom together, and they talked openly about their dreams for the future. Ryan wanted children, and Lisa found herself excited about the possibility of raising a family with someone who would be a true partner in parenting as well as business. As for David, Lisa heard through the grapevine that he had eventually lost his ranch to foreclosure and moved to another state to start over. She hoped he was doing well, but she rarely thought about him anymore. That chapter of her life felt like it belonged to a different person, someone who had been willing to accept less than she deserved because she didn't know her own worth.